Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Parivrajakasadya Stotra Satya Sri Simad His Divine Grace Sirabai Charanaravinda Bhaktivedanta Swami Sri Prabhupada Ki Ananta Koti Vaishnava Vrinda Ki Iskandiditi Founder Acharyas Divine Grace Srila Prabhupada Ki Namacharya Srila Haridas Thakur Ki Samaveta Bhaktivinoda Ki Harinama Sankirtana Ki Granthara Srimad Bhagavatam Ki Jai Gaura Premanande. All glories to the assembled devotees, all glories to the assembled devotees, all glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to Sri Guru, to Sri Gauranga, all glories to Sri Prabhupada. Om Ajnanatimirandasya Gyananjana Shalakaya Chakshurunmilitam Jena Tasmai Sri Gurave Namaha Sri Chaitanya Manobhistam Stapitam Jena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Kadamahyam Dadati Swapadantikam Vandeham Sri Guru Sri Jita Parakamalam Sri Gurun Vaisnavam Sya Sri Rupam Sagrajatam Sahagana Raghunatam Vitam Tvam Sajivam Sadvaitam Savadutam Parijana Sahitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Sri Radha Krishna Padam Sahagana Lalita Sri Vishakanvitam Sya He Krishna Karuna Sindhu Dinabandhu Jagatpate Gopesha Gopika Kanta Radha Kanta Namostute Tapte Kancana Gaurangi Radhe Vrindavaneshwari Vrishabhanu Suti Devi Pranamami Hare Priye Vansakalpa Tarubhyasya Kripa Sindhu Vyayevasya Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha Narayanam Namaskritya Naram Chaiva Narotamam Devim Sarasatim Vyasam Tato Jaya Mudirayat. Before reciting this Srimad Bhagavatam, which is our very means of conquest, let us first offer our respectful obeisances unto Narayana, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, unto Nara Narayan Rishi, the supremmost human being, unto Mother Saraswati, the goddess of learning, and unto Srila Vyasadeva, the author. Nasta Prayashabhadreshu Nityam Bhagavata Sevaya Bhagavati Tamasloke Bhaktir Bhavati Naistiki. By regularly hearing the Srimad Bhagavatam and by rendering a service unto the pure devotee, all that is troublesome within the heart becomes destroyed practically to nil, and loving devotional service unto the Supreme Lord, who is praised with transcendental songs, becomes established as an irrevocable fact. Idam Bhagavatam Nama Puranam Brahmasamitam Uttamasloka Charitam Chakara Bhagavan Rishi Nishreyasaya lokasya Dhanyam swasyayanam mahat. This Srimad Bhagavatam, known as the Grantharaj, the king of all Vedic literatures, is the literary incarnation of God. It is compiled by the incarnation of God as Srila Vyasadeva. It is meant for the ultimate good of all people. It is all successful, all blissful, and all perfect. Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Shri Vasadi Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Hare Krishna Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama Hare Rama 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 Hare Hare Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya Om Surabhyaya Namaha Om Surabhyaya Namaha Om Surabhyaya Namaha Mukham karoti vasalam pangum langayate girim Yat kripa tamaham bande Sri Gurum Dinataranam Yat kripa tamaham bande Sri Gurum Dinataranam. Hare Krishna. Welcome to our daily Bhagavatam lecture. Today we are beginning a new chapter from the second canto, chapter 3, which is entitled A Pure Devotional Service, The Change in Heart. And we begin with text number 1. Sri Shuka Uvacha Evam Etan Nigaditam Pristavan Yad Bhavan Mama Nirinam Yan Mriyamananam Manusheshu Manishinam Shri Shuka Uvacha Evam Etam Nigaditam Evam Etam Nigaditam Pristavan Yad Bhavan Mama Nrinam Yan Mriyamananam Nrinam Yan Mriyamananam Manusheshu Manishinam Sri Shuka Uvacha Evam Etan Nigaditam Pristavan Yan Bhavan Mama Nrinam Yan Mriyamananam Manusheshu Manishinam Sri Shuka Uvacha Evam Etam Nigaditam Pristavan Yad Bhavan Mama Nrinam Yam Mriyamananam Manusheshu Manishinam. Sri Shuka Uvacha. Evam mitam nigaditam. Kristavam yadvavam mama. Nrinam yanam riyamananam. Manusheshu manishinam. Sri Shuka Uvacha. Evam metan nigaditam. Pristavam yad bhavam mama. Nrinam yam mriyamananam. Manusheshu manishinam. Sri Shuka Uvacha. Sri Shukadeva Goswami said, Evam, so, etat, all these, nigaditam, answered, Pristavan, as you inquired, yet, what, Bhavan, your good self, Mama, unto me, Drinam, of the human being, yet, one, Mriyamananam, on the threshold of death, Manusheshu, amongst the human beings, Manishinam, of the intelligent men. Translation and purport by His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada Ki. Sri Shukadeva Goswami said, Maharaj Parikshit, as you have inquired from me as to the duty of the intelligent man who is on the threshold of death, so I have answered you. Kindly repeat after me. Shri Shukadeva Goswami said, Maharaj Parikshit, as you have inquired from me as to the duty of the intelligent man who is on the threshold of death, so I have answered you. Purport. In human society, all over the world, there are millions and billions of men and women, and almost all of them are less intelligent because they have very little knowledge of spirit soul. Most people don't like to hear that. The vast majority of people, both men and women, are less intelligent. Here, less intelligent means in the context of not knowing about or not understanding about the spirit soul, which is very fundamental and essential. Almost all of them have a wrong conception of life, for they identify themselves with the gross and subtle material bodies, which they are not. In fact, they may be situated in different high and low positions in the estimation of human society, but one should know definitely that unless one inquires about his own self beyond the body and the mind, all his activities in human life are total failures. And no one likes to hear that they are failures also. Therefore, out of thousands and thousands of men, one may inquire about his spirit self and thus consult the revealed scriptures like Vedanta Sutras, Bhagavad Gita, and Srimad Bhagavatam. But in spite of reading and hearing such scriptures, unless one is in touch with a realized spiritual master, he cannot actually realize the real nature of self, etc. And out of thousands and hundreds of thousands of men, someone may know what Lord Krishna is in fact. In the Chaitanya Charitamrita, Madhya Lila, chapter 20, verse 122 and 123, it is said that Lord Krishna, out of his causeless mercy, prepared the Vedic literatures in the incarnation of Vyasadeva for reading by the intelligent class of men in a human society, which is almost totally forgetful of the genuine relation with Krishna. Even such an intelligent class of men may be forgetful in their relation with the Lord. The whole Bhakti Yoga process is therefore a revival of the lost relation. This revival is possible in the human form of life, which is obtained only out of the evolutionary cycle of 8,400,000 species of life. The intelligent class of human being must take a serious note of this opportunity. Not all human beings are intelligent. So the importance of human life is not always understood. Therefore, manishinam, meaning thoughtful, is particularly used here. A manishinam person, like Maharaj Parikshit, must therefore take to the lotus feet of Lord Krishna and fully engage himself in devotional service, hearing, chanting, etc., of the holy name and pastimes of the Lord, which are all Hari Katamrita. This action is especially recommended when one is preparing for death. End of the purport. Translation again. Sri Shukadeva Goswami said, Maharaj Parikshit, as you have inquired from me as to the duty of the intelligent man who is on the threshold of death, so I have answered you. Who is not on the threshold of death? Everyone is on the threshold of death. Everyone may leave this body at any moment, at any time. This requires, as Prabhupada explains here, this requires some intelligence. Only those who are very fortunate, Prabhupada uses the word here at the end of the purport, Manishinam. Manishinam is translated as thoughtful. Thoughtful, and the word for word, Prabhupada translates as of the intelligent men. Thoughtful. So whoever is attending Bhagavatam class, he is in the category of Manishinam. You're all thoughtful persons. Yeah. This Vedic knowledge, Prabhupada also makes a point. Previously, it was not necessary to put this knowledge in writing, simply by hearing, by oral reception. Now it has been put into writing to make it easier, to facilitate people to have access of this information, of this knowledge. We can see in the purport, that is the repetition of what is of course mentioned in the Bhagavad Gita, that very, very, especially in Kali Yuga, very, very few people have sufficient developed intelligence to understand even the basics of what Bhagavad Gita is teaching us. That we are not this body. As again and again Srila Prabhupada would be reminding us. So the Vedic literatures we were reading in the previous chapter in particular are most important because of all of the recommended activities in the human form of life, which will be bringing us the maximum benefit, is the activity of hearing, Sravanam. Sravanam, Kirtanam, by these two activities, naturally and automatically, Vishnu Sparanam, we will be able to remember Vishnu or Krishna. And as nicely explained, of course, in the Bhagavatam also, Ante Narayana Smriti. Ante Narayana Smriti. This is what is taking place here between these two personalities, Shukadeva Goswami and Parikshit Maharaj. Since Parikshit Maharaj knows, because he has been cursed, that he will die within 7 days, so he is preparing himself for that moment. So Ante Narayana Smriti, because none of us know when we will be leaving this body, therefore we should be preparing ourselves every day. Preparing ourselves to remember our primary goal and primary duty in life. Nate vidu swartagatim hi Vishnu. Bhagavatam also is explaining that same point. Nate vidu, vast majority of people don't know how important this is, this human form of life. To cultivate this transcendental knowledge and to especially focus on, in the last few verses that we were reading in the previous chapter, Srila Prabhupada was making the point of focusing on that is there, but on plain living and high thinking. on understanding plain living and high thinking. If we actually hear properly the message of Bhagavad Gita and Srimad Bhagavatam, then it brings us to the quality. It brings us, helps us to develop the quality of simplicity. Modern day society is the opposite of simplicity. Very complex, very involved, very complicated, and therefore very, very taxing, very taxing on the mind, very taxing on the body as well, because of the lifestyle. We were discussing about lifestyle also. The ideal lifestyle, of course, is a lifestyle that is taking place in the spiritual world, where everyone is engaged in Krishna's service. And Krishna, when he descends in the material world, especially when he performs his pastimes in Vrindavan, is teaching us what is meant to be the lifestyle in the material world. There is a lifestyle in the spiritual world, which is actually reflected in the material world when Krishna descends in the material world. In particular, his incarnation and his original pastimes of Vrindavan. Vrindavan, we understand, is a direct, the whole material world is a perverted reflection of the spiritual world, but Vrindavan is a direct reflection of the spiritual world. That's why it is so important to, we could say, understand these two dimensions of plain living and high thinking. Because in Vrindavan, the Brajavasis and Krishna himself, Krishna is Brajavasi, they are teaching us by personal example what is simple living, plain living, and high thinking. Although none of the residents of Vrindavan have gone to university. Have you gone to university? Have you gone to university? Yeah, right. Yeah. Someone was telling me just, God, I think yesterday or a few days ago, how to facilitate the development of, try to follow this, to facilitate the development of a more natural, original consciousness, both material and spiritual, it is better not to send one to regular school, college, and university, because it is derailing us. It is derailing us. It is making us not helping us, rather the opposite, making us artificial. We are being so-called educated in the wrong education. Yeah. And as Bhagavatam also states, it is atmahana, especially. It is killing the soul, killer of the soul. This is nicely explained in the Sri Ishopanishad as well. There's a warning to those who, in the name of knowledge, in the name of education, are basically teaching what is in the category of avidya. There's vidya. There is, actually, there are three categories of vidya. Vidya means knowledge. Vidya means knowledge, and we can only properly understand about vidya if we read the Vedic literatures, because the Vedic literatures are primarily divided into two of those three categories of vidya. Vedic, the Shruti reveal what is called Paravidya. The Shruti are dealing with Paravidya. Paravidya means transcendental knowledge. Paravidya. The Vedic literatures, the section of Smriti, are primarily dealing with Aparavidya. Aparavidya. But this Aparavidya is meant to be directly connected with the Paravidya. So therefore both Paravidya and Aparavidya in the Vedas are the vidya, are the knowledge that we should be cultivating. Because if we don't cultivate either Paravidya, Shruti from the Vedas, or if we don't cultivate Aparavidya, Smriti from the Vedas, we cultivate avidya. Avidya means ignorance. We remain ignorant. So therefore, we can easily understand and easily conclude as well that in any educational institution where Paravidya is not taught and where Aparavidya is also not taught, then simple mathematics or logic brings us to the conclusion that it is avidya which is taught. And avidya, meaning ignorance, ignorance is the cause of suffering, isn't it? The more we are ignorant about whatever, we are at a disadvantage. If I don't know, if you're coming from Pune to Mayapur and you don't know where to get down and what as it might have happened, I don't know, then we get in trouble, right? Anxiety, especially we go to a new place and we don't get all the proper information. Hey. So ignorance is the cause of suffering. And the opposite is true. When we cultivate knowledge, then we avoid the suffering. So there is so much suffering in the material world today because people are swimming they're swimming in avidya, swimming in ignorance. They're drowning. They're not even swimming, they're drowning. They're drowning in avidya. Constantly faced with all kinds of, practically speaking, impossible challenges. Actually, it is impossible in as much as no human being can swim across the ocean. The material world is described as a vast ocean. So we cannot get out of this material world. We cannot resolve the problems that are there in the material world unless we take help and assistance from knowledge provided in such literatures as Bhagavad Gita and Srimad Bhagavatam. And therefore, those who are even having a little glimpse or a little understanding of these basics, they immediately begin to understand, my God, before I came to Krishna consciousness, I was also in that category of avidya, and I was suffering. And that means that those who have not this great fortune of coming in contact with Bhagavad Gita, Srimad Bhagavatam, which is a vast, which is actually 99.9% of the population in the world. Prabhupada is making this point here also, that the very first line of the purport, which probably many people don't like to hear, but the vast majority of people are less intelligent. Less intelligent in the sense that they don't have this basic knowledge of what this human form of life is meant for. And they are fully engaged, generally speaking, their whole life, right up until the moment of death, in pursuits that lead them nowhere, or rather that lead them to a more miserable condition. This is the difference between a devotee and a non-devotee. A non-devotee, his activities are beneficial both in this life and the next life, isn't it? One who is actually cultivating knowledge, his life can be joyful and happy in this life and joyful and happy in the next life, isn't it? Because one is on the transcendental platform. And the opposite is there. Those who are not having this knowledge, their life is miserable in this life, and because of it being engaged in all kinds of sinful activities, they are preparing their next life to again be miserable, right? So therefore, one of the most important qualities and characteristics of a Vaishnava, of one who is cultivating this knowledge, is that he is concerned about those unfortunate persons who still have either not had access to this knowledge, or who may have had access but are still not getting it or not applying it properly, isn't it? And therefore they are continuing their miserable condition in the material world. So coming back to this lifestyle, Krishna's lifestyle is a lifestyle we should be living. Krishna's lifestyle in Vrindavan in particular is a lifestyle. Now some people may say, well, I like Krishna's lifestyle in Dwarka. I like city life. Dwarka city. So, but we should read actually the description of Dwarka. I mean, cities in themselves are not bad. Modern cities are bad. But the concept of city, and again, in the Aparavidya, Smriti section of the Vedas, that's where we find all kinds of information about, for example, Vastu. You know, we're going to be coming up with some, a project here, and the more one follows, just like yesterday, actually, I'm going to tell you right now, but we should never, or we should avoid sleeping with our head in the north. North is that way, your head was that way. You were already unconscious, so I didn't wake you up. When somebody's sleeping, we should not wake them up. That's another thing. So, because it's like two magnets. You don't put two positives together. You put positive and negative. So therefore, north is positive, our head is positive. They should not come together. Yeah, right. So there's so many things regarding Vastu, for example, which of course one may say, well, that's all material. Yes, it's material, but we are living in a material world, having a material body, and the more we harmonize things with the material nature, then the more we, the more things will be proper. Otherwise, if we contradict the established laws of nature, then we open the door to all kinds of irregularities, etc., like that. So we have yet to learn. We means the entire world, in particular, and unfortunately, many of us as devotees as well. And in many ways, our own ISKCON society has yet to learn this dimension of plain living. We know more about Well, even that we have to work on high thinking. High thinking is especially in terms of, cultivating this knowledge of Krishna consciousness. But again, this knowledge of Krishna consciousness is not simply in terms of the spirit soul and what is taking place in the spiritual world. This knowledge of Krishna consciousness is also, because that is part of the Vedic knowledge and the Vedic literatures, teaching us how to deal with and work in harmony with Krishna's energy, with Krishna's material energy, because Krishna's material energy is non-different than Krishna, you see. Krishna's material energy is directly from Krishna. It is referred to Daiviyesha Gunamayi. This divine energy, this is also divine when we connect it. It becomes undivine when it is disconnected with Krishna. So therefore, there's all the information that we need for living in harmony with ourselves, with this material body, with nature, etc., is given actually in the Shastras. So these two things are mentioned from the Bhagavad Gita itself as well, that the real knowledge, actual knowledge, is knowing about matter and spirit, isn't it? From the very first, second text of the 7th chapter of the Bhagavad Gita, there is that verse explaining about what is real knowledge. Real knowledge means to know the difference between matter and spirit, means to know the origin of that matter, the origin of that spirit, and needs to, and also what is meant to be the ideal relationship, interaction between matter, spirit, and the origin, which means Krishna. So this is only possible, this understanding is only possible, of course, when we take the time, as we are doing, as Prabhupada has taught us, as more and more people should be doing, especially those who are in leadership positions. They should be hearing from the Bhagavatam on a regular daily basis so that we can know and understand things properly. Again, both in terms of the level or the aspect of plain living. What is, somebody should write a book on plain living. What does plain living actually mean in our modern context of the 21st century, you see? Because Vedic knowledge, and we'll close on this point here, Vedic knowledge is standard knowledge. Vedic knowledge is knowledge of Sanatan Dharma. Vedic knowledge is eternal knowledge. Vedic knowledge is unchanging knowledge, because it's dealing even materially, the modes of material nature as they existed 5,000 years ago, or, so many yugas ago, are the same modes of material nature today. Human nature is human nature, isn't it? And the Vedic literature, beginning from the Bhagavad Gita, is teaching us about this material nature, about the constitution of this body, the gross material body, the subtle material body, and therefore it is rightly said that the Bhagavad Gita, in addition to being the best book on philosophy and theology, is the best book on psychology. If one really wants to understand about psychology, the best psychologists are actually the devotees who have properly studied Bhagavad Gita. The best psychologists are those who study the Bhagavad Gita so that they can begin to understand about themselves. By understanding about ourselves, by understanding about others, then we can more easily resolve whatever issues may be there. And if we're not able to resolve issues, then we're lacking in, at some point, at some level, in this understanding. So as we normally do, I'll just read again the verse, and if there's any comment or question, this is the verse. Text number 1, Sri Shukadeva Goswami said, Maharaj Parikshit, he's addressing Maharaj Parikshit, as you have inquired from me as to the duty of the intelligent man who is on the threshold of death, so I have answered you. Any comment? Question? Yes?
Maharaj, like we have, how much we should give emphasis on material rules and regulation like Vastu, astrology, or like when I was in Pune, like there was a chapter in 5th Canto.
There was what?
There's a chapter in 5th Canto,
yeah.
Prayers offered by Jambudev. There I heard like we are indebted to so many demigods
yeah,
for
yeah.
so many things.
Yes, yes.
But there comes a line like if you are doing Krishna consciousness, if you are devotionally connected, all your debts are just paid off. So,
yes, okay.
So I'm like little confused, like how much we give emphasis on these things also.
Okay, got it. So the question is, we hear in the Bhagavatam about Vastu and the importance of living according to different seemingly material instructions and astrological calculations, and some people actually, don't take a step without looking at astrology, or don't step out of the house, and things like that. So the idea is that, yes, it is mentioned that those who are engaged in devotional service, this becomes secondary. But we should understand what does it actually mean? If one is engaged, there's engagement in devotional service and there's engagement in pure devotional service. If one is engaged in pure devotional service, then this becomes secondary. Not that it's not important, but it's secondary. And those who are not engaged in pure devotional service, then it becomes even more important, you see. As I was mentioning about, the head, the direction that when we sleep, it's not that the pure devotee will not follow that. He will also generally follow the guidelines that are there. It's just like, although those who are situated on pure devotional service, and this brings us, of course, to the whole discussion or concept of varnashram, because that's an argument often presented, and Prabhupada, of course, explained also that for devotees, because varnashram is a material system, material arrangement, it is less essential on a higher level. It is less essential for those who are engaged in pure devotional service. How many persons are engaged, even how many Vaishnavas, how many devotees are engaged in pure devotional service? And that's why I often bring this, or remind myself, remind devotees as well, of this important quote by Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur, who mentions that actually Varnasrama Dharma is that social system meant for the Vaishnavas in their conditioned state. We have a natural kind of tendency to think that, well, now I've become a Vaishnava. But Prabhupada actually corrected one devotee who was making that point. Well, I thought we're all chanting Hare Krishna, followers of Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, we're all Vaishnavas. Prabhupada said, not so easy to be a Vaishnava. it is not so easy to be actual Vaishnava. And therefore, Varnashrama, which is that God created ideal system, and Prabhupada made the statement as well in that exchange, that the Varnashrama system is that ideal system to help us to become Vaishnavas. You see. So even someone who is a pure devotee will also respect, in general, the Vaishnava principles and system, although he may not always follow it. But we should not make that exception as a rule. You know.
As far as possible, we should follow.
Yes, yes, and you know, when the pure devotees are also respecting and following Varnashrama, what to speak of those who are not on that platform, isn't it? Yeah. So therefore, astrology, Vastu, and so many things that are there in the Vedic literatures, they, in the context of what is pure devotional service, are secondary. But they have their importance, and as long as we're not situated on that platform, the more we follow them, the more benefit we will get, basically. Yeah. So it is not, we should not just reject them or say it is not important. I mean, in selecting or understanding what is one's varna, we don't discuss this so much, and as a matter of fact, some people, some devotees may even say or conclude or have already concluded that it's not really important. But actually, according to our founder Acharya, it is important, because he gave so many instructions that we as a society are meant to introduce the Brahminical culture, the Kshatriya culture, the Vaishya culture, the Shudra culture. We are meant to train individuals. Prabhupada spoke about this at length, and more than once, on many occasions. We are meant to train, that's the whole purpose of Varnashram College. Varnashram College is meant to introduce and to train individuals to become ideal Brahmanas. It is meant to train and educate individuals to become ideal Kshatriyas. And the same for Vaishyas. And in that context, Prabhupada spoke about it is for men. Men are meant to become ideal Brahmanas. Men are meant to become ideal Kshatriyas. Men are meant to become ideal Vaishyas, because they are the natural leaders within society. When we start changing that formula, as we are in modern day society, and as we are within our own ISKCON society, we open the doors to all kinds of problems. Yeah. So it is something material, but we are here in the material world, and as we tried to explain a little earlier, the more we harmonize, the more we are synchronized with the material nature, with the workings of material nature, then our life will be more in a better position. Yeah. Yeah? Right. Okay, since time is, yeah. We'll close here for now. Jai Ram Parashmat Bhagavatam Ki Jai Sri Prabhupada Ki Gaura Premanandi.